I'm sort of in the middle. I live in Fitchburg, 30 acres just outside of Madison. Have a neighbor about half a mile away. Who I met knocking on doors for Obama and assembly races and school board races. Former co-owner of Albany Brittany, an artist, conservative, libertarian, watches Fox News, voted for Trump. And had some conversations, because she's basically a good person. I had conversations about how do we know what's true? And I was sort of trying to raise the point, if you're limiting yourself to a single source of news, like Fox News, it probably creates a problem in terms of your ability to really reach a reasonable and rational conclusion about what's going on in the world. So I've been sharing some things from PolitiFact about Fox News and their concerns about 80% of what's broadcast is actually not true. It's started to make a little bit of a dent. There is a bit of buyer's remorse, particularly concerned about the Russia connection. I said, hello. But the other thing locally that's happened that's really been sort of neat that sort of relates to developing relationships. We've started, in fact, on Sunday, we're going to have our second meeting of what we're calling the Lawler Road Connection. Lawler Road is a rustic road in Fitchburg, borders on the town of Dunn, and some of the neighbors have gotten together. In fact, there's a proposal that's been submitted to have the Lubisa wetlands recognized as a wetland of international importance. And there are 49 property owners in the immediate area who have basically signed on to having their land designated as conservation easement. And it's been a source of really sort of pulling people together, sort of talking about what's going on. We've identified 193 different species of birds in the wetland, which is incredible. And by the start of a sort of a way of sort of talking about some issues and getting together at this local base of common interest, and we're sort of starting to open it a little bit in terms of talking about other issues, healthcare, voting rights, and other things too. So it's sort of exciting to see the opportunities that are out there to really start connecting with people. And once you have somewhat of a relationship, it's a lot easier to sort of talk about some of the other issues that are also shared concerns.
What I have here is, I mean, there is a dichotomy, and I don't think it's rural, urban. I think it's wealthy, not wealthy. That's the real issue, and it's one that nobody wants to talk about. As far as the zero-sum gaming, I believe it's very much an issue because we see what happens. Obamacare there's attempts to scrap that at the same time that tax cuts are provided for the wealthy. And the same thing has happened on the state level too, where social programs are cut back so the wealthy, who supposedly are going to create jobs so that they can have lower taxes so they can invest in jobs, which obviously isn't what happens. But I think those are the real problems. As far as finding common values, I guess my response is very simple. Go take a walk around Maple Bluff sometime, and you'll think you're on a different planet. And I don't think that's by accident. I think the people of Maple Bluff very much want to be cut off from the world. Well, take a walk around the streets of Maple Bluff and just see if you think you have anything in common with the people that live there. And my answer is you don't, and you never will, and it never will be possible. And that's the unfortunate reality that we have to live with. And the real question, I think, is maldistribution of wealth, how that can be rectified, and even, indeed, if it can be rectified through the conventional political structure. Thanks.
You don't have a choice between, you can't really shop around if you don't have options, and there isn't, basically, people can't go elsewhere. They have to consume health insurance or health care. So health insurance industries realize this, and they really take advantage of people. So I think really focusing on the fiscal aspects of it and how government, single payer around the world, industrialized nations, how that empirically is more efficient than these privatized health insurance industries, you know, multi-billion-dollar industries. That's a way to quantify how much wasteful spending there is. That's money that's, you know, literally being put into this healthcare pool that's getting taken out for, you know, the very few, the CEOs and what have you. So I think it's really important to understand the rationality behind these conservatives. Don't just listen to them for the sake of listening to them, because they do have a rationality that I think is valid in a lot of ways. And until you let people know that you really understand where they're coming from, they aren't going to listen to you.
Thanks, James.
Cool. So Sarah, we have a pretty full staff. Do you want to jump in? Should we start maybe like a time limit?
Find the people to talk to them, okay? That's the thing I think that's lacking. We're sitting here talking about all these wonderful ideas, but we have no way to reach them. Charles, we had some really wonderful things. We got together with your neighbors of the wetlands. We found something was commonality. I think it's really important. Like when you guys sent out this little flyer about the healthcare thing, I'm sitting here thinking maybe I take a picnic table or a card table, sit in the middle of a square, hand all these flyer to doors, right? Say I'm going to be sitting at the square from 5 to 6. Do you want to come down and talk about what your community needs? I think it's important to talk about what the community needs. I was doing some phone calling the other day and a guy said, well, I know what we need in some prairie. We need transportation. We need buses.
Yeah.
I think we need to ask them what they need. I don't know that we should go in and say, hey, you need health care or you need this. Why don't we find out what they need in their community? And I don't know how to reach them. And that's the question I have, is how do we help them?
Sarah, you mentioned that 11,000 Wisconsin farm families are using Badger Care. So I found that number impressive. Went to the press conference where Badger Care for All was introduced. Just kind of want to hear some of your comments on that, how that will help farmers, maybe hurt them, on that. And then in conjunction with that, to your comment about news. I found it kind of difficult to find any story about that. I went home and I didn't look at every news source, but only found it on Channel 3. And it was a very short clip. They didn't even mention the bill's sponsor. And then at the very end, the commentator said, well, they're going to have a very hard time with this bill with the Republicans controlling, the assembly. And so I'm going, that's kind of an editorial thing that he put in, which he didn't cite any basis for it, And so we're fighting it right there. It's not just Fox News, but those little bit of snippets that, oh, well, they're not going to have a chance because the Republicans are so strong. So just some of your comments on Badger Care for All.
Do your neighbors, colleagues, people who voted for you know you have a PhD in sociology from Madison? Farmers and other people who aren't employed by a big employer often have to scramble to figure out health insurance. How receptive do you think they and other rural people are to the idea that you shouldn't have to worry about it? Access to health care should be a right that is provided to you and by the government if nobody else will. 3, in Kathy Kramer's book, she does a little fact-checking about rural resentment, and at one point she says, although rural people generally think that they're being exploited by Madison and Milwaukee, when you actually look at tax receipts and whatnot, the flow goes the other way. But of course what that misses is the fact that politics has revolved around the question of them people and the white liberals who love them people, and what's your attitude towards the two. Now, I don't think it makes sense to take it on directly by going and telling a bunch of rural sort of racist people that you're sort of racist, but instead it seems to me what you do is provide them a different enemy. I don't know how directly you take on the fact that them people aren't taking your stuff away, but what do you think about telling them who the real enemy is instead?
Okay. Cool. I'm gonna knock when you have like 10 seconds left. That was only like 10 seconds.
My question is just, what is the best method of having a conversation with people? I'm thinking we're going to be in towns having some kind of community conversation. There could be like a speaker that people come to hear and then have discussion. those tend to be like progressive speakers. And then that's gonna like shut people down who are coming to, actually have a conversation. So, or, you have the town hall where there's a representative, but people are just like shouting at them and not really having a conversation either. So I'm thinking it has to be more of a, let's just all come to the table and have a conversation. And so I'm just wondering, well, yeah, we can say this, but where are the Republicans? So
They'll show.
So anyway, that's just my question is, how do we have this conversation? Yeah.
They'll come.
I'm going to stand up here so I can actually look at you, because otherwise I feel like I'm shouting and heckling from the back. So I have 2 questions. One is following up on Rakul's, but from a slightly different aspect, although reinforcing it. The United States is weird in that employers are the primary basis for people getting health care. It's not unique, it's not the only country in which employers drive a lot of that, but it is weird in that way. I was struck by the fact that you started out by talking about the fact that you have employment so that your families have health insurance. And I wonder how, I guess it's a little less directed than maybe Rakul's question, but I wonder how that plays out in the conversation along the rural-urban continuum. Not least because, as Mike Bell is fond of pointing out, a name and person I know you love well, farmers are actually a fairly small proportion of the rural population of Wisconsin. There's a lot more people in rural Wisconsin who are underemployed, unemployed, reeling from the effects of deindustrialization and other forms of employment leaving. And of course, those were, back in the day, much more what we think of as like social or kinship networks in which health insurance and healthcare were supplied, not just through insurance, but actually through on-site plant health plans that included providers. And the provider bit bridges into the second. How much should we be thinking not just about health insurance, but about the enormous gap now in Wisconsin in terms of rural health provision by primary care physicians, by specialists, the lack of, sorry, that's really distracting me. I don't speak well with the countdown and blue glaring in my face. With effectively what's been an exodus or a brain drain from rural Wisconsin, they come to Madison, they get trained, and with the exception of some programs like WARM in Milwaukee, you don't, or in Madison, you don't see a lot of people coming back. It's gotten a lot of press, a lot of scholarly attention to Wisconsin. So I'm wondering if that provides another way to bridge over, that may not be farm specific, but that is certainly geographically relevant. Thanks.
Awesome.
I'm the sociologist.
Not farm.
I want to go back actually to what somebody called in when he was talking about the concern about healthcare and the value of freedom and control and linking to efficiency and inefficiency. What other value, broad values would you say, can you say, are characteristic of rural conservatives that we ought to be thinking about? I would underline what was said earlier about the difficulty of finding occasions and mechanisms for crosstalk. I don't think debate is probably the very best. And I'm curious, Charlie, what did you learn from the guy who you made a dent into?
Even if it was small. And Charlie's your last person on the stack. So
Well,
that's
I was
great.
going to say, the thing that I found is really terribly important to reach out beyond the comfort zone and talk to people you don't usually talk to. I've run into people up at the Capitol, I've run knocking on doors, running for city council, running for assembly. It's been a delightful experience, getting to know people that I would never otherwise have gotten to know. And I was somewhat surprised when I was running for Pittsburgh City Council to discover that people who voted for Ronald Reagan voted for me knowing I'm a Democratic socialist. That the label really didn't seem to make a difference when you connect with people, when you listen, when you're talking to them, responding to the issues and concerns that are is central to their existence. One of the things I really think is terribly important to remember, most of the areas in rural Wisconsin that voted for Trump went for Tammy and they went for Obama. And in a lot of those areas, and somewhat along the lines of what Kathy Crane was saying, I think some of the people are sort of feeling, so what have you done for me lately?
Yeah.
And it's not much. And particularly having been on school for years, I see that in terms of the impact on rural schools in particular because of the fact that they're experiencing declining enrollment, cutbacks in funding, losing programs, losing teachers. They're losing businesses because there isn't support there to provide trained employees. Their property values are going down and their property taxes are going up. And it's a death spiral for a lot of the rural communities. And I think it's really critical to sort of understand the need to find ways like high-speed internet, that can really provide something of value to say, this is a reason to support an agenda that's supporting your local rural communities. It gives you some hope. It's really frustrating because a lot of these small communities, their kids are leaving, even if they do graduate. And they're not coming back in most cases because there really aren't any opportunities there. And I think listening is such a huge, huge part of this. And frankly, in terms of where you start conversations, it's really critical not start like you're trying to sell something. To really, get acquainted and introduce yourself, and where you have a connection and you can discover the things that you have in common, like family, and kids and grandkids, and concerns about what's going to be happening in terms of their prospects.
And food.
And food.
Julia and Brian go first.
Sure. I think my primary question is one that's maybe been brought up, but I want to reiterate it so that I can get an answer, which is about the Badger Care public option and whether that plays to farmers or other people in rural area as a good thing or as a loss of freedom, government takeover kind of situation. And I'll stop there.
Okay. Greg.
Hi. I sound like too pessimistic here, but I'm very worried that even just by framing the question as rural versus urban, as the way for OWR or any progressive group is going to go, we lost already. I think if it's poor versus rich, powerless versus the powerful, plutocrats versus the vast majority of people, we got a chance. Rural versus urban, in a way, is the other side's framing, the other side's argument, and I think it's effective. Obviously, there's people who live in the country. That there's some differences, but there's differences within rural environments themselves that are very vast, as well as as there are in urban areas. And I'll do that. I guess I got a couple minutes. The other thing has to do with the zero-sum game thing, which I mentioned a few times. Yes, people think in terms of zero-sum games. They don't only do that in the country. They do that. This is kind of a standard of political discourse right now, and it has been pretty much my whole life. And I'm not all that young. And it's not only done by Republicans, but it's done by Democrats. And if you want an economics degree now, you pretty much got to buy some version of that. It could be fancier talk, but it wasn't that way 50 years ago, but it is now. And if you're going to say we don't, I agree, you don't want people to get in a position where you're talking in terms of a zero-sum game, where it's you versus them. However, in order to get to that point, it's going to take what you may look at as a radical reworking of how we describe how things work. And that it's not just things that saying it's not a zero-sum game. Explaining why it's not a zero-sum game is not itself going to be easy. and the risk of going on too long, I'll stop there.
Cool. We had one more person jump
Couple
up.
of brief comments. One of the things people were saying was how do we talk to each other? What is the mechanics? We go out to the small towns, maybe we have somebody from the Farmers Union come with us and help us arrange things. We talk about ourselves, we talk about our values, and instead of providing other enemies or things, we provide friends, we bring it together, we bring Wisconsin together. If that's my slogan for the day, is to bring us together at the table, because we all basically in our core are the same. We bring out our core values that we can share, avoid the zero-sum talk, avoid that kind of junk that gets in the way of the message, because it just does. It clouds everything that you really want to accomplish, which is to create a community in Wisconsin, to bring us together. From downtown Milwaukee, bring them farm to table. Their only bookstore in the northwest side of Milwaukee is closing. It was an indie bookstore, and she just retired. She couldn't do it anymore. Those types of things bring it together. Thanks for all the really good thoughts and ideas and questions. And I was going to tell a quick example of something I said I was going to tell you, but I forgot. So I went on a bus trip to Milwaukee from Reedsburg the other day with the Worm Farm Institute, which is a group that does not grow worms, but does arts and agriculture, and they do the Fermentation Fest and the Farm Art Detour every year up in Reedsburg, and I happen to sit on their board. But what was interesting is that a group of people from inner city Milwaukee, primarily African American, had come on a bus to the Fermentation Fest for 2 years in a row to meet the people in the rural area, understand what was going on, share some music, share some art, share some appreciation of agriculture. And this was our turn to reciprocate and go and meet them in their communities, and went to some art galleries in some people's homes. We went to the Fondy Market, which is a farmer's market. We visited some community gardens in a Latino neighborhood and an African American neighborhood. And we're calling it the urban rural flow. And this is now in its third year. This is like playing the long game. You know, we're just getting to know each other and getting to understand where we're all coming from, and I think, you know, we're going to have to think about some of those long games too. But obviously we want to see electoral results. So we have to think about what are the time frames that we're working on. I do like thinking about, you know, Raul and I think Josh kind of asked, like, how do these sort of ideas play with people? And I think it's very good to point out that there's 1% of the population is farming. So we've got a lot of other people to work with. But what's interesting is people still trust farmers. If you look at any of the sort of research of who are spokespeople or who are people that are generally trusted, farmers are still right up top there. So as far as we're framing stories and telling stories, and I also want to comment, you know, and we've talked about this, you know, we can come up with all the facts we want about how Badger Care works or how it doesn't work, and that's not the place to start. That's the reason to come up with compelling narratives and build relationships with people so that we can all have nice things, because we need Badger Care to be more accessible for everyone. And in order to get that, we need to broaden our coalition and get people elected that will get that in office. But as far as sort of what plays with people in rural areas in general, farmers and non-farmers, I don't think that going out and saying, like, the government is going to fix this for you is obviously, we know that's not like a argument that works right now. I liked your framing when you said you shouldn't have to worry about this. I actually think that's, you know, people, yeah, why am I stressing about this so much? Why is this such a huge problem for my family? Why, the thing that makes me crazy is the spaghetti dinners and bake sales that people have. Every time you go into a convenience store or a bar or a supper club, you will see all of these flyers for the next bake sale or the next spaghetti feed to earn money or help raise money for someone who's had some catastrophic health thing happen. And I want to be like, that is wrong. But again, the community's coming together, all these people, so I don't want to feel like a jerk and be like, do you not understand the structural problem of this? So not having to worry about it, I think, is, you know, some good messaging. Fairness works across all of these issues that we're talking about. You know, why it should be fair. People should have fair and equal access. Josh brought up the issue of, you know, healthcare provisioning. You know, that I think would be something to work on with fairness. You know, rural people should also have access to the best quality healthcare. You know, what we saw with the Obamacare and the way that they framed, the opposition was about sort of control and, you know, are you going to get to see your doctor? And the way that they were able to pretend that it wasn't working was, oh, see, you didn't have control. So I think, you know, thinking about some of those framings and how, you know, how to advocate for a program that would work, but also be able to get public support and able to get electoral support, I think, is important. I actually thought about, you know, Steve, you asked the important question of like, well, okay, great, and how do we find these people to talk to? And, you know, just saying, oh, we're going to have a teach-in for you, you know, is that really going to get it? We might actually want to go a little bit behind the scenes first, because I sat on the Columbia County Board for 3 years, and for a while I was on the Health and Human Services Committee. Now, the thing, if you've been on a county board, and I think you know too if you're on town boards or city councils, like the rubber hits the road at these municipal level governments because they got to figure it out. Like they've got to make it work. And the county governments in Wisconsin are the ones that are administering a lot of these federal programs. And I'm almost wondering if maybe looking at who's on the Health and Human Service Committee for all of the counties, or some group, some set of strategic counties. I mean, we probably don't have the bandwidth to do 72 counties, but can we pick some strategic counties that we want to work with? Can we identify some of the key people that sit and are key informants or key people, key decision makers, and can we figure out ways to be in conversation with them, to listen? How does this impact your county budget? In what ways, when you see the federal money disappear, when you see the state money get drawn back, how are you seeing that then in your county budgets of more people, you know, seeking the different Medicaid packages, or when Badger Care becomes less accessible, you know, where do those people end up? Where do you see it in the nursing homes? I mean, a lot of counties still operate their own nursing home. That's where you start seeing the Medicaid, because that's when people hit those programs because they can't afford to be in a nursing home. So in some ways, I mean, yes, let's think of, this is the top ed, so we want to think about sort of the wider population, but from a strategic informational and strategic relationship building, especially around healthcare in Wisconsin, I actually think either some subset of people really trying to look at those key people, and those people on county boards, they've been elected, like they are, you know, they have some kind of a popular following, and certainly I know that in Columbia County we're talking about the Columbia County Our Wisconsin Revolution, we're talking about focusing on the county board races. It also gives you the opportunity, it's a nonpartisan race, so I'm not saying let's not work on the partisan races, but how do we build the bench of people? How do we rebuild the culture of progressive voting that doesn't get tied to this, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, therefore I can't listen to you anymore because I've decided that you're on the opposite side, which is not helpful. So, I actually think that, just in listening to folks' questions, that might be sort of a mechanical, strategic way to start working on the issue that isn't going to, let's have a town hall and then 12 people come and it's all the usual suspects, and that's maybe not the best use of our energies right now because we all need another meeting. Like we need no, I mean, and we need them because we need to talk to each other too. But as far as any of the other questions, when I did run for Congress in the last cycle, I ran against Glenn Grothman in the 6th Congressional District, and I did not tell people that I had a PhD in rural sociology or medicine. My experience as a woman with an advanced degree, as sort of sad as it is, when I was on the county board, I had powerful people in more executive decision-making committees on the county board say, Sarah, when you talk, we don't want to listen. And the person was trying to help me. They were trying to be nice to point out that I should find someone else to put forward my resolution because people had already decided that I was this crazy person with these big ideas. And, as much as you want to be like, no, that sucks. It's something to think about as sort of who's the messenger as we go out and how do we talk about these things and how do we really create the stories, because I do think that the stories are going to work. So I think the Badger care, as far as I kind of mentioned, what's going on right now, the eligibility for Badger care was scaled back a couple of years ago, and I do think that 11,000 farm family number is probably fewer now because they were less eligible because the Walker administration changed that and didn't take the Medicaid expansion.
Also fewer farm families.
Well, and there are fewer farm families, yeah, exactly. But I do think so. The fact that many farm families are sending someone off farm to get the employer health insurance, that's certainly something that a lot of farm families are like, if I didn't have to do that. I mean, the same with any self-employed person. If we think about the argument of entrepreneurialism and small business development, I mean, we're really hampering our economy in the United States by having so many people tied into day jobs where they may be being able to be a little bit more nimble and agile in the economy if they didn't have to do that. And that seems like a positive.
Yeah, could that farm be more productive if they didn't have to send that person off-site for healthcare?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's assuming they can find health care from an employer.
Right.
Well, and I have to admit that when I should have stayed a graduate student because I had the best health care. Because then when I finished, we had to buy health insurance for a while because I wasn't eligible yet because I wasn't working for the farmers union at the time. And then I called around to all these places and I'd get through the whole entire thing and they'd say, oh, and what is your husband's occupation? Because I would say, oh, he's self-employed. And they're like, what's his occupation? I said, he's a farmer. And 2 companies said, oh, we don't insure farmers.
Right.
It's too risky.
High risk.
Yeah, high risk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dorothy?
What do you know about the rollout of family care around the state? It's about to be imposed on Dane County. And we're scared, the people who know about it.
Yeah, I don't.
Say that again.
Family care.
Okay.
State is basically privatizing the healthcare system for frail elderly and disabled folks. Yeah, the whole.
I have to say I don't know that much about it.
I don't
heard
either,
about it.
but I know that that's something that we're seeing more and more of all the time. I mean, I'm from Kansas, and that's something that they've been trying to do down there for forever. These administrations like Walker and Brownback are all about that, and it is very concerning. But I honestly haven't.
Yeah.
So Dane County is going to lose control of the health care of about 1,200 of our residents. And the state is handing them over to private organizations. Here you go. And Dane County does over and above for people. And I know that people are not going to get what they're accustomed to having.
And those are those kind of more localized impacts, like at the county board level, that I think are compelling stories that people get, you know, because then it's not this sort of abstract thing of Medicaid or, you know, that it's like this family had a special needs child or an elderly person, and once they had to get bumped into this private health system, they lost these caring things. And I think people get that. So maybe figuring out some of those real stories.
Well, Walker did back off on privatizing the
We
state
do have somebody
employee
on the
coverage.
staff.
Yeah.
So
Last
we're gonna
staff
go over that.
person.
There were a bunch of questions and comments about, like, how do we find out the people that to talk to, what is the format of, like, how do we sit in with these people, and like whether we should prepare to understand their mindset beforehand or not. And correct me if I'm wrong, the way I understood your answer was that we should de-emphasize that and like emphasize talking to people who have been elected to county boards, and like is that a correct understanding of what your answer was?
Well,
basically,
yeah.
That's not what we should be doing. Basically, maybe not right now, and our strategy
Well, I guess
is to
if I
focus
think
on-
of the short game and the long game, so the question for folks on the phone was, did I say not to kind of do these more broader popular education or outreach to the broader population? Because I mentioned an idea of strategically reaching out to county board members that are perhaps on health and human services or other committees that are impacted. I'm just wondering if sort of in the short game and as far as trying to organize the activities of people, if there's some data gathering about who those people are, some strategy about then, okay, we've identified this group in 20 strategic counties, and maybe they're counties where their OWR has local chapters, or or maybe it's these are the hottest state Senate and Assembly districts, and this is why we should focus on these counties, because we want to talk to those people in those counties. I don't think that we should, let's see, I don't want to make a double negative. I think it's still important that we think about this broader, relationship building across the populations. At this point, I'm like the mechanism or is it a town hall? Is it bring in a speaker? I just feel like maybe that's not the most effective, and maybe it's more of finding places where people are already gathering. I know that when I was on the campaign trail for the congressional race, I sought out all the local food dinners that were advertised, and I found the broadest range of partisan, I found Republicans and Democrats there. I found the broadest demographic of age. So I'm in rural counties, so everyone's white. I found 20-year-olds and 70-year-olds at these local food dinners. Oshkosh is working on a grocery cooperative. They've been working for several years to get enough people to be the founding members with the equity investment. I went to those meetings all the time. I found the broadest range of people there. So, maybe it's also figure out where are people already gathering. I mean, that is the bit of the dilemma in both rural and urban places, is we've lost where do people gather? Like, how do you even find people?
Can I jump in? there's a group called Policy in a Pint that meets up, and it's people of various ideologies that just talk and kind of introduce people to their ideologies.
Okay.
Good, look for those. So doing public things, is it that we're kind of figuring out how to get to know people and get invited to some of these places that people are already gathering? As opposed to us trying to create these separate events?
I think that the overarching question, is basically where do we go from here? What should be our next step as the PopEd work group in terms of continuing to work on healthcare and thinking about how to reach beyond the circle of the usual suspects. So we have a few different models that were discussed earlier about how we might do that, right? One idea is that we get out and start some new OWR chapters in places that have been strategically identified as useful that are more or less within an hour driving distance from Madison. One idea is that we adopt something like a community conversations model where we have an open forum discussion that we host somewhere outside of Madison. Another idea is that we kind of develop relationships with folks on county boards. And I think there are potentially lots of other ideas that we can put out on the table. But I'm passing around the sign-in sheet that and encouraging folks to just indicate with a yes/no whether they would be interested in developing something to move forward with the healthcare vision that OWR has, but take that message outside of Madison and to some of the surrounding areas. And if folks have some strong thoughts about kind of which of these strategies they feel we should prioritize, that would be terrific to put that forward. So Sadie, would you mind continuing to be our step person?
Okay, we'll go from back to front for right now.
Okay. I think, yeah.
Okay, well, thanks. I think the question of like what the practical strategies should be or which should be prioritized is partly a question whose answer depends on what happens when we start doing things. It's kind of an empirical question. And I think maybe the most important thing is to kind of recognize all these models and like experiment with some of them and see how they work and learn from that experience and kind of strategize as we go, not try to come up with like find the best answer before we have had any experience what's gonna, because things are gonna be unpredictable. Maybe people will receive a very warm reception, or maybe there are gonna be meetings that turn into like huge fights. We don't know what's gonna happen, and a lot of people in the room, although they have had a lot of experience of working for good causes, a lot of it consists in connecting to people and mobilizing and exciting people who are like-minded. And so this might be kind of new for a lot of us. So I think we should kind of like focus on starting how can we kind of transfer the energy to starting something and learning from that the experience as opposed to trying to answer all the questions right now.
So the gentleman in the back with the
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I was going to suggest that if we choose to go down this path of rural-urban dialogue, even though I have my reservations that that's an effective way of promoting health care, but assuming we do, there's a natural cause right now, and that would be the pipeline, the Enbridge pipeline that cuts a nasty swath across Wisconsin from the Illinois border up to Superior, and there's many concerned landowners in the rural areas of many counties, and they're not too happy about the pipeline being expanded through their property. So I mean, there is something that there's a very good example of a potential very rich common ground that might be pursued.
Point on working in that area. I don't think it's a good idea for me from Madison to go up to wherever and say, I want to tell you what you need to know, or even to ask them. I think they need a local connection to reach out into their community, and you can help them with that.
So I guess I'm not quite clear on what we're talking about. Are we gonna do the debrief on the teach-in after this? Is that?
Let's do it, yeah.
Okay. So.
But you can, if you want to start transitioning and talk about that too, you should go ahead.
No, I'll let you decide when we should do that. So I think we need to be a little bit more systematic in terms of what we're talking about doing. Now, the fact that you can't go to Superior and bring in Noam Chomsky to talk about healthcare does not mean that we don't need to be planning teach-ins. We need a visible presence on this issue. We are about to get a directive from our Revolution National about making healthcare a major signature issue right now this summer. And although it's been hastily thrown together, I think that a lot of people are going to be responding to it just like they did to the also hastily thrown together call for sit-ins at the senator's office. So we need to be thinking about teach-ins. We need to be thinking about town halls, because again, I think that if you can get people to a town hall, the whole idea there is they're expressing what they think, and they're talking about what they want, and they're not being taught at in a town hall. There are places where a teach-in won't work with that well. We need to think about having packets and materials so that individual point people in various places. And I've started trying to identify them, people to reach out to from the sign-ups I got at the convention, where I have people say we're interested in healthcare, and we certainly should get more from the people signing up there. Most of them will need some sort of packet that says, here's the approach we're talking about, and here's what we can get behind. I hope that's a dog. And we don't have those materials, so that's something that will take a lot of development while we're also identifying people. And then once people have that kind of thing, then they can have people over for coffee clutches or house parties or however they want to do it, and we'll have to push them to do it. But all of this is part of what needs to be an integrated campaign where we have worked out all the different things we do. Right now, we don't have the resources or infrastructure set up to do any single one of these things well.
Yes.
I think you were next,
Yeah.
Charles.
Okay, so that was just because people have been texting me saying that there are still people on the conference call. So I don't know where that is.
Oh dear. Okay, I didn't see that Josh left.
Okay.
Real quick, I've been thinking and talking for some time about trying to revive the tradition of the Chautauqua as a way of taking conversations on the road and getting a real investment, sort of a combination between Bobfest and Woodstock, to really involve the community in both some activity that creates a stronger sense of community, but also creates a forum and place for people to have conversations about what's going on in their communities. Obviously, healthcare is a big one.
We're gonna go Nick and then Juliana. Did we get people on the conference call back in?
I'm still working on it.
Okay, cool. Let's go Nick.
So one of the things that we as individuals can do, and I think that's really important, because we talk a lot about what can the group do, what can the group do? Well, we can all do something individually, is we can go to these communities ourselves and we can shop in these small towns, and we can spend our dollars there, and we can talk to these people. We can talk to the business owners. That's something that I think people tend to forget about. I mean, we tend to live in our little Madison bubble where we've got everything we ever need, and we don't go to the Stoughton's and the Mount Horebs and the Sun Prairies and the Portages and all that. And I think that's really important. I mean, I'm from a rural community in Kansas, and I know how important that was to me when I lived there. Now I find myself going back to those small communities nearby to find out that, find that pulse and what's happening there, and building on those connections. I was listening to public radio this morning on my drive from Sauk County back to Madison, and there was an over-the-road truck driver talking about how much has changed in the 40 years that he's been driving truck. And one of the big things that was discussed was how interstate highways have moved out of these communities, and we no longer pass through these towns anymore. They're the forgotten towns. And that's happened all over the country. So we need to get off the beaten path. We need to get back on those state paved roads, or even a dirt road every now and then if your car can handle it. And go and see these communities and start talking to them.
Hardware stores and bars.
Yeah. Find out where the best, cheapest cup of coffee is too, you know, and that's where you're gonna find these people.
Juliana?
So I just wanted to say we're coming up at kind of the end of our time together. Okay. Okay, I'm still here. Okay, so I just wanted to get some, go to Rahul's point, and as we're thinking about moving forward, it's also really useful to think about what we did right and wrong so far. And so for those of you who were at the teach-in that we did, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts, and just so that we can grow from there.
Can you make one quick?
Yes.
Sorry. So one thing you might want to keep in mind, jumping off of Charles's idea. So Fighting Bobfest is being reimagined a little bit, and I have a meeting coming up with the Progressive because they're sort of housing Fighting Bobfest. But the idea that I pitched to them was they do something in Madison, and then we get at least 2 of the big name national speakers, and we set something up out in the other parts of the state. So that might be something. I mean, Jim Hightower is committed to doing something on either that, well, probably it would be the Saturday evening or the Sunday, if there was a non-Madison or, you know, an outstate place. But maybe we want to ask Fighting Bobfest organizers, is there a speaker on healthcare? Can we get a nationally known speaker on healthcare that's willing to stick around for a day after? And then that could be a project of our Wisconsin Revolution to host in coalition with other groups.
Get a doctor.
Yeah, but so maybe think of, are there some people that have normally come to Fighting Bobfest that you think are particularly good on healthcare, or is there someone else that is a nationally known speaker that would be someone to try to work on getting to come to Wisconsin?
Bernie would be the obvious.
Oh, Bernie.
Beth actually wanted to add something.
Yeah, I feel like the teach-in, I wasn't at it, but I did go online and listen to all the clips of all the speakers, and my understanding from talking to people, including my sister who was there, was that there was very little done with the engaging in the smaller groups, and the Q&A got cut short. And I really have a concern that it's going to turn into too much of the preaching to people if we put our focus on teach-ins.
And preaching to the choir.
And preaching to the choir. And that's not what we're trying to do. That's not what this whole discussion today has been about. So I really am concerned. If we're talking about doing a teach-in to mobilize OWR in parts of the state where we want to dig out some of the more progressive-minded people, that's a different initiative to me.
So then we have Ellen?
I just wanted to add, I just wanted to add to, since I was there, that if we want to talk to people like the people who were at that event, these were people who were pretty knowledgeable, who were obviously knew what was going on. We needed to change the focus of what we were doing. If we're going to start preaching to the choir, if we're going to start having events for OWR people, for people who are interested in single payer, we need to talk about single payer. You know, we need to tell people this is how it works. It would be more of an educational thing. We don't need to talk about personal stories about, you know, I mean, it's important to know that doctors and people have a lot of paperwork or whatever, but I think we need to have it more of an educational event.
Dorothy and then Rahul.
Okay, I was going to ask, was it Pam Yonke? Is the
Fabulous farm babe.
Exactly. Where is she on healthcare?
That's a
I
good
don't
question.
Could we get someone who the rural community is already in touch with that would want to speak on the issue?
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she would take a very strong stand on anything because she tries to sort of, but I think it's the ideas, like that idea is a good idea.
If she went into it as a way of informing her audience, she might be real willing to do something.
Yeah. Jim Massey, who's the editor of the Country Today, is a statewide agricultural newspaper, but they cover rural life. He has been willing to take kind of controversial stands, kind of no nonsense, like let's cut the crap here, people, like we really need to fix these problems. He might be another person.
I wonder if someone like Gail Schultz has been really good at education.
Charlie, we've got a stack.
What's on the stack, sorry?
Facilitator, sort of.
Up close, yeah.
So we'll respond to Beth, because this is an issue that comes up all the time. So I completely share your concerns, and I think it's been, gosh, maybe 15 years since I heard a big name speaker say anything I found interesting personally. All right. One of the problems with, especially with the nationally known ones, is they come in, they give very superficial talks. But that said, you're not going to a teach-in to get information. If that's the way you're getting information, then you are doomed to a life of being uninformed. Because real information to really assimilate it, you need to read stuff, and you need to have teach-ins that bring people into getting more informed. But the problem with the idea that preaching to the choir is it's like a hamster running in a wheel and you're not actually getting anywhere, is that the choir hasn't been singing for a long time. All right. In order to get the choir to sing, well, they need to get fired up by the preacher. That's what's needed right now. Despite the fact that we had a lot of energy at the convention, we had people who were willing to spend barely one day, one evening and one morning and one afternoon in Stevens Point, talking in a very general way about what we ought to do, has not been translating yet, and it's going to be very difficult to make it translate into effective, coordinated, organized action where people are making real contributions to a collective effort and not just through being in meetings, which is already difficult to get them into at the statewide level. So we need things that build up energy. And that is why a call from OR National, just because it has Bernie's name on it, even if it is not clearly thought out and doesn't quite seem to make sense, is going to get lots of people involved, whereas the idea of saying, let's have local people saying, I want to talk to my neighbors about healthcare, is quite likely not to get a lot of people involved. It's not like it's not something we should do. It's simply that we have to think about all these things strategically and keep them in balance. If we get big name speakers, we can't be excited and focused on that. We need to make them part of a big picture.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I want to say something and then I have to run. I'm so sorry. Then we're going back to Beth and then Juliana, and I'm sorry that I have to leave. Just a quick comment to what Ripple said and what Beth said. I think that if teach-ins aren't to learn, then we need to maybe think a little bit more about what we want the focus to be. Because I think that moving forward, if we want to use this model again, like if the actions are what we really want the teach-ins to build towards, then we need to find a way to integrate them a little bit more meaningfully into the program. And again, this was a first attempt, so but this is all good to keep in mind moving forward. Like, what do we want the focus of the events to be? Okay, cool. I'm so sorry I have to leave, Beth and Juliana.
Yeah, organization building is a goal, and teach-ins are toward that goal. I'm addressing, once you get somebody in like me, who has some energy, who wants to be engaged in this process, you need to be able to feed people like me something very tangible to move forward. And that's what I feel that is part of the work of this group. Is not just organization building, but I came in here because I want to be able to start seeing an agenda move forward.
So if you want on the stack, let me know.
I think I'm on the stack. Yeah, I was just gonna propose that we wrap things up because it's already 4:04. But I think all this feedback is really useful, and many of you have also emailed me with more extended thoughts. And please, if you haven't yet, please email me with things that you think we can do better next time if we repeat a teach-in model. And I agree that I think the action items should have been built in more seriously. And kind of been a part of that in a stronger way, because we want to get people, in this case, people who largely already agree with us, get them working and helping. And I think we also need to work on being clearer on our positive vision and why, we're fighting. Not just what we're fighting against, but what we're fighting for.
Need to ask people for their feedback.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if we're wrapping up, then I've got to say the biggest problem, I think, was that
Could you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, the biggest problem is that most of the speakers were ungodly boring. And so they drained whatever little energy there was in the room. There was little energy in the beginning because there weren't enough people there. If there had been twice as many people, then it would have felt very different. And they drained the energy so quickly that it never had a chance to recover. The actual program was a little on the long side for events we've had, but it wasn't too long if there was energy. There just wasn't.
I will say I did receive positive feedback as well from various people, so not to leave on this very, very negative note.
I thought you had a good crowd. I was a good
crowd. So please remember to sign in, and if you're interested in moving forward, put a little yes next to your name. And thank